Jeff Koons was born in York, Pennsylvania in 1955 to Henry and Gloria Koons. His father was a furniture dealer and worked as an interior designer and decorator, and his mother was a seamstress. So by the age of 8, Koons had begun creating replicas of old master paintings, which he signed Jeffrey Koons and sold in his father's shop, interior design shop. As an older teenager, he became fascinated with Salvador Dali, and keen to meet his hero, he called the hotel that Dali was staying at in New York City and was actually put through to his room. Dali offered to meet Koons, and they attended an exhibition of his work at the Knoedler Gallery together. Which I guess really speaks to Koons's personality. You know, he goes after what he wants. He takes initiative. So after graduating from high school, Koons enrolled at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, where he continued to cultivate his interest in Dali, painting these neo-surrealist dreamscapes that kind of Dali is known for. And we'll look later in the presentation, we'll look at some pieces where you can maybe see Dali's influence on Koons's work. So in 1974, Koons viewed an exhibition at the Whitney Museum in New York City. The exhibition was by Jim Nutt, a founding member of the 1960s Chicago Surrealist movement, known as the Chicago Imagists. And this exhibition was kind of a watershed moment in Koons's life. And because of it, he transferred to Chicago in order to work with Nutt and the other Imagist teachers. Nutt was a member of the group called the Harry Who, known for their bright, often grotesque paintings inspired by consumer culture. In 1977, after graduating from college, Koons moved to Manhattan and took a job selling memberships at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA. And during this time, he also explored the new wave and punk movements that were emerging in New York City, as well as the East Village art scene that kind of rejected mainstream art and embraced counterculture. And from the East Village art scene came neo-expressionism and neo-pop art that would influence Koons' art as well. In the early 1980s, Koons had some of his first exhibits that were critically acclaimed, and he became known as, quote, one of the strangest and most unique of contemporary artists. So these were some of the pieces that Jacques and AJ mentioned earlier. You might recognize these sculptures, Blue Balloon Dog and Rabbit. Rabbit was created in 1986 and actually combines the ideas from an earlier work of his. He created this pink bunny that sat atop 4 mirrors. And with this sculpture, he combined those ideas and created the sculpture itself out of mirrored material. And the carrot in the rabbit's hand is wielded like a weapon, and its shell is almost like an armor-like made of stainless steel. And as Jacques and AJ mentioned, Rabbit is the most expensive work sold by a living artist at auction, being sold for $91.1 million in May of 2019. So with Blue Balloon Dog, Koons' reproductions of balloon animals are amongst some of his most recognizable pieces, usually rendered in kind of a mirrored, finished stainless steel in a variety of colors. The works reflect an element of childhood play and disposable culture. Using the recognizable form of a balloon twisted into the shape of a dog, Koons is frozen a moment in time, exaggerating both scale and material. So Tulips is a bouquet of multicolored, again, this balloon kind of, it's kind of shapes like balloons, blown up to gargantuan proportions. Tulips is more than 6.5 feet tall and 16 feet across. And it's part of a series he did called Celebration, the Celebration series. It was initiated by him in 1994. And it was focusing on the kinds of generic mass-produced objects associated with birthday parties, holidays, and other festive events. From a party hat, he did a party hat sculpture and a piece of cake, to Balloon Dog that we just saw. The celebration paintings and sculptures reflect Koons' continued engagement with these emblems of childhood. And while Tulips is technically thought of as kind of a minimalist sculpture, this colorful piece almost brings to mind like a cheerful parade float, if you will, and really evokes a sense of joy and amazement. I mean, you can imagine standing next to this and it just being absolutely huge. So here is another selection of balloon animals that are part of Koons' Celebration series. These are on display at the Gagosian Gallery in New York. And Jacques, you can see in the back, we have our blue swan, blue balloon swan, balloon monkey, and balloon rabbit. And again, using this mirror-like material in bright pops of color is what Koons is widely known for. So this is a porcelain sculpture. It depicts Michael Jackson leaning back on a flower bed, and on his lap is his domesticated chimpanzee Bubbles, who kind of clasps at a white cloth. Michael Jackson and Bubbles is an expression of Koons's interest in openly disregarding conventions of good taste and playing with kind of what taste means. This sculpture is part of his series called Banality. And he created giant porcelain sculptures that alluded to cheap collectible figurines. So in this, we can see Koons used a very striking gold color. And he actually noted, he said, quote, "I wanted to create him in a very godlike icon manner. But I always liked the radicality of Michael Jackson, that he would do absolutely anything that was necessary to be able to communicate with people." So Koons began the Hulk series in 2004. The Incredible Hulk pose recalls that of Elvis Presley. It's called the Hulk Elvis series. And it was this picture of Elvis Presley from the Western film Flaming Star. You can kind of see it in the background of Triple Hulk Elvis 2. This is one of the singer's best known images, immortalized actually by some Andy Warhol screen prints. And so Koons takes that and transforms this image of Elvis Presley into a version of the Hulk. So for Triple Hulk Elvis 2, made in 2007, Koons selected images from his giant collection of photographs and advertisements. And these multiple sources were kind of collaged into this, very conceptual representation. And then on the right, we have caterpillar ladder. Excuse me, that's a bit of a tongue twister. And for that one, I'll start with this quote by Koons. "Pool toys are inflatable, just like people. Inflatables really are metaphors for the continuation of life." This piece is part of his Popeye series. You can see he kind of works in these series throughout his career. And with this series, Koons juxtaposed replicas of large inflatable pool toys with kind of unadulterated everyday objects to create these striking surrealist sculptures that are as conceptually complex as they are visually arresting. So Caterpillar Ladder, as the title suggests, consists of a large replica of an inflatable caterpillar pool toy that has miraculously wound its body through the rungs of an aluminum step ladder. So here are some of Koons' oil on canvas works. Party Hat we can see on the left, again, reminiscent of celebration and childhood joy. And as I mentioned before, he did a sculpture of a party hat that this was based off of in the 90s. And what's interesting with the other two pieces is that Couple Dots 2 and Couple have very similar names, obviously, but as you can see, they're very different in subject matter. Couple Dots 2 also has more of a pop art feel to it, kind of almost reminiscent of Lichtenstein's art style, whereas Couple on the far right has more muted colors and more obvious imagery, such as the pretzel and the fishnet material. And these two paintings are also part of different series that Koons did. The first in the middle being from the Hulk Elvis series, and the latter being from a series he did called Easy Fun Ethereal. And in my opinion, it's easy to see the inspiration from Dolly in these oil works. So Koons has really challenged top art collectors to revise their notions of what fine art is. This kind of marketing strategy of pushing back on fine art, or even what modern art is, has been very successful, and his work garners some of the highest prices of any living artist. Koons is this kind of anti-modernist, shrewd, a self-proclaimed crowd pleaser, and an avid promoter of his own work. And this has made him a very divisive figure in the art world. But his controversy has clearly created such a successful and long career. And as you can read here on this slide, the Pace Gallery will now be representing Koons globally. Wow. And I will actually link to an article discussing this more in depth in the chat if anyone cares to read more about that. Thanks, everyone.
Wow. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, that caterpillar in the ladder was just totally striking. I never thought of people as being inflatable.
Right.
And I wish I had a caterpillar pull toy when I was growing up.
That was fun. All of those are fun, and particularly the ones, the swan and the other ones that were there. Those are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have a sense of how big they are until you see people standing next to them. They're like 12, 15 feet tall. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And I think you have to think about all the planning and engineering that has to go into the manufacturing though. So I mean, beyond just being an artist, he had to be probably a material scientist or engineer to figure out how those things were fabricated.
Similar to Andy Warhol, if you remember, I mean, that was many art talks ago, but he had a lot of assistants around him. And so he obviously, these huge sculptures and structures that he was building, it took a lot of people's help. And he had a lot of assistants helping him in his workshop.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. I want to show actually one thing. It's one of his early pieces. He actually worked with the famous Nobel Prize winning physicist, Richard Feynman out of Caltech. It's called the Equilibrium series. And I think if we can, we have to show the background. So what he really researched this project with Richard Feynman, and the tanks are actually filled with distilled water and just a small amount of ordinary salt. And that assists these hollow basketballs in actually remaining suspended in the center of the liquid. It's just amazing.
It's interesting. I mean, physics at work, and you gotta love physics.
It is. Isn't that something, Sarah?
It is. I mean, it's something that looks, again, kind of like caterpillar ladder. It looks so simple, right? It looks like, oh, anyone can do that, but it's really, you know, he's challenging what art is.
Yeah, you had to get the saline mix exactly right in order to distill the balls only a part of the way.
Exactly.
There, right?
It's almost like an illusion, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Incredible.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah. That was fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
And I'll link to that article in the chat if anyone wants to read more.
Thanks.
Excellent.